fair few OPs open though. Supports and those ranged supports are the more prominent picks. Jarvan really good against those ranged supports, and that's why his meta prominence has risen sharply.
Yeah, interestingly enough, it was WE that had first selection. They opted to prefer to be on the blue side. IG, of course, going to take that first pick because it has been so popular in the current meta. So maybe WE have some cool strats planned. You know, with Ezreal locked in, you can have some poking around the Baron pit a little bit easier. Well, we'll see how exactly that works. It's going to be matched up alongside the Rise. I will say, Fulls, these are two of the champions that WE played in their lone win against JD Gaming. So if they're trying to replicate some of that success, it's a good start so far.
I mean, why not, right? If you're literally, I believe it's 1-18, and there is one game that you won, you may as well just lean towards those champions who won you that game. So as far as I remember, they actually won the first game in that best of 3 as well. So all they needed to do was just win another of the remaining to get their first series win, and they were unfortunately reverse swept in the best of 3. So this might be able to get them that first win in this particular series, and we're just gonna have to see if they can find out what to do in the rest of the series after you finally get a win. But of course, I'm getting ahead of ourselves. We'll see what they actually want to opt for here. Rise being a really strong pick in the meta due to his global presence, but always is a very counterable champion with the existence of Cassiopeia and Anivia, particularly Cassiopeia with Jarvan being a very strong combo. Locked into the Cataclysm, throw a Miasma in there, I'm pretty sure there's absolutely nothing you can do to survive.
Yeah, Karis going to have some success outside of the lane if he wants to succeed. Arha has really thrived more on engaged champions versus the current meta of enchanters. Perhaps with this Bard lock-in, meaning that you're not going to have too much of an early lane poke situation from IG. Arha feels more comfortable locking in the Nico here to get a little bit of that extra range in the 2v2, while also having some nice engage for himself. As we head into the second phase of bans, both sides locking in their mid laners and their supports. WE is going to be able to ban out some AD carries. IG will be able to ban out some junglers from Monki.
Yeah, banning out some junglers from Monki. I wonder what angle you'd want to go for here. I believe maybe Vi would be something that comes to mind for me. Maybe the Xin Zhao, you know, I'm not sure if he would be building those items that we were discussing in the pre-show. But yeah, and it's interesting here that this particular game 1 draft, you almost always see this. In my head, there's kind of the big 5 when it comes to these ranged supports in the Nico, Bard, Karma, Nami, and Seraphine. So that's going to leave just only a few of those open going into the next draft, but we might get to see some of those melee characters then where, you know, that KDA of Mako's might just decrease even further. But for the meanwhile, we'll get to see what he's able to do here on the Bard and what junglers they want to ban away. I do like the Nocturne ban. That one didn't come to mind just yet. But again, global champions just being so strong. Nocturne and Pantheon both banned away. Rise picked for that very reason. Bard low-key picked for that reason as well, with all of his, you know, I like to call it the Schrodinger's Bard, where he's just kind of in a super position at all times. You might think that if Bard is in the fog of war, he may as well be in your lane. So
yeah, for the side of Team WE in the jungle position, the Xin Zhao would be the next up on the meta list, and so that will be taken away for Invictus Gaming. I'd imagine you can save your top lane pick for last. Just pick a jungler up here because you're not going to get too much of a difference in terms of understanding which the matchups are going to look like for Monki. The Lee Sin always going to be something to consider when you have a player of this caliber that has really risen to many star levels in his past season, and it will be that Blind Monk being locked in for Team WE.
Yeah, Blind Monk for the Monki here, and he's been playing this a lot in his career as far as I've seen, you know, to varying levels of success. A lot of players, it's really interesting. I feel like Lee Sin, there hasn't really been any patch notes. I mean, there are some coming with that being said, but he's just suddenly risen in pick rate across major regions without much reason for it. And I think a lot of these junglers just really like that playmaking potential that Lee Sin offers, that early game threat that he has where he's really able to get level 3, level 4 ganks off, like pretty much like within that before the first recall compared to most other champions. He falls off a cliff in the mid-late game, so you really want to capitalize on that early game potential that he does offer.
So the Scion, the final pickup here for Breathe. Jachi also going to be piloting the Misfortune. So a very team fight heavy composition for IG. Could this mean that Q pivots a little bit? The Yorick has been his most played champion of the season so far, but he's actually going to go with the nerfed Ambessa. This is still a decent lane matchup into the Scion. You eventually will, just not really be able to kill him super easily, but I think overall what WE have set up for themselves, Fools, is a really nice pick comp that can use these semi-globals, these ultimates from long range, to try to find members of Invictus Gaming before a full 5v5 breaks out.
Yeah, they definitely have some pretty strong, champions on their side here, and pretty good matchups as well. The Ambessa into the Scion being a pretty favorable one, but from my perspective, I would say it's pretty clever drafting from from IG, because I made a really crazy comment one time, which I still can't believe I did say, which is that I used to think that Cube and 369 were on like a similar level. Based on watching Cube for this past while, yeah, that take was way too hot and way too out of pocket, and I've come to realize that that was just not the case, and Cube is low-key a complete liability on the side of WE. So I think taking away the Scion, one of the easier champions to be a liability as, if I'm gonna be not too nice, that was pretty clever, meaning that now Cube can't really use that crutch, and he's gonna have to play one of the more skill-intensive champions in the Ambessa, who also, as we've been mentioning, did receive those ultimate nerfs. And I would not be surprised if we see those patch notes come into play in this match. Watch out for those public executions, and if they're able to land against these players on 0 ping.
I'll get my stopwatch up. I'll make sure to see if that 0.65 is really super noticeable for the public executions on the Ambessa. Another opportunity, as we've said, for WE. They have not won a series so far. They've not won a series since their Knights Rivals appearance back in Split 1. Maybe this is the time. It's been 11 straight best ofs. 12th time the charm against one of the most prestigious organizations in IG. Live from Xi'an, it's game number 1 of WE and Invictus.
Grapes, keep your dreams. I love that. And yeah, we got some browse for the Xi'an home crowd here in WE, and it's gonna be a really interesting series tonight. Right off the bat, we get to see 2 Deathfire touches in the mid lane, meaning that they're really gonna want to have as much trading power as possible. This rune even received a hotfix nerf and is still completely taking over the meta. Really good on a champion with a dot such as Cassio.
Absolutely. Things like the phase rush were super popular on these 2 champions back when it still existed in the game, more so on the Rise's side. But now with Storm Raiders, you get a lot of that power still, but it's not until later on in the game when you actually are able to deal a big chunk, 40% of a player's health before you actually do end up getting that movement speed buff. So for these players, getting the Deathfire touch, a little bit extra damage, perhaps a little overtuned at the moment as well. And this is, I think, an opportunity for Team WE, specifically because a lot of the weaknesses that they have faced so far this season have been in the solo lanes, right? You mentioned Cube. Karis also has not looked up to snuff against some of these other top mid laners like Shanks, like Cream, like Knight. But with Nyak coming into the mid lane, and with so far a decent lane matchup, hopefully for Cube, WE might have an opportunity to just not fall super far behind in their solo lanes here today.
Yeah, they definitely got themselves a pretty reasonable chance at something here in this draft. I really think Rise, and that's why they were able to win that previous game, just because of that global threat and pick-making potential that he does offer. It can really kind of warp the game around it, where you almost have to tank tower dives at a certain point, where if Rise just decides he wants to ult himself and his jungler up towards you, that you either just fully back off tier 2 tower, or you just kind of have to tank death sometimes. Really strong that Realm Warp ability is, although of course his range is going to be brought into question here against this Cassio matchup. Monki making use of that early game Lee Sin Grapes.
See if he actually is able to catch Nya here so far. Rune Prison does connect. Monki lands a Sonic Wave, has to jump away from the Miasma to land the Resonating Strike, and fun enough time for Mako, and way to arrive to the party as well. Arha flashes forward, and it's first blood picked up for Karis. Gonna go down in a trade as Nya with the burn from the grave, able to take one back. But an aggressive start for Team WE has them even at 1-1.
Yeah, I was getting a bit too optimistic that WE was going to find themselves a 1-for-0 first blood, but, you know, I mean, that 1-for-1 is definitely something that we're going to be able to take here. We're getting the summoner spells spent there from Karis and from Arha, doing anything they can to make sure that this Casio of Nya does fall down, but at the end of the day, he does. And if anything, it was a pretty important decision to make there, something worth going for, given that Nia did have the TP advantage, which can make it really awkward for the champion Rise here, not being able to get his recall off so effectively. So you kind of want to use that ghost, use that flash if he makes you, just to get that pick and get yourself a somewhat decent reset of the lane conditions, or else that TP advantage looming over your head just eventually becomes something that yields Nia a lead. Whereas now we've got a pretty big lead on all of the mid jungle and bot here for WE.
Yeah, big is perhaps an overstatement here.
Yeah.
It's the 1 gold lead at this point.
The 1 gold.
They've been trading camps back and forth pretty nicely in the jungle and about, and Arha doing good enough for themselves down a bottom. About goes for that base, picks up the tier. They're going to start stacking up as well for him and for Karis in the mid lane. I think the big thing is getting that gold into the Rise early, right? You can start that tier stacking early, get an accelerated Rod of Ages, and also just have yourself a better time in this lane that is supposed to be that typical counter matchup.
Yeah, I feel like when you are playing Rise into these matchups, be it the Casio or the Nibia, this is what you want to do. You want to be applying this pressure, and Lee Sin can do this.
Yeah, no flash this time for Nya. He's just going to go down. Monki secures the kill. Mid lane has been the focus for Team WE, and they're making it work so far.
This is exactly why you draft Lee Sin here, in my opinion, because like we were saying, those early game ganks, Lee Sin is pretty much second to none in a lot of his early game, you know, threat potential. Monki really making use of it, and this is going to yield WE a pretty favorable spot in the mid jungle where maybe they can now make use of those realm orbs for more proactivity. I'd love to see them either make a threat towards the bot lane, maybe see if they can get the Drake going, or if not that, then at the very least come dive breathe up here with Cube and just keep that snowball rolling with that global pressure from Rise.
So interestingly enough here, Fulls, Monki has not played Lee Sin since 2024. Throughout the entirety of WE's run in 2025, didn't get to play the champion a single time. Last time actually he played it was against Invictus Gaming back in 2024 when he was a member of VDG. They ended up losing that game. He's 2-3 overall on that pick. But although he's gotten a couple of ganks off, he has definitely sacrificed his clear for it. And Jwei and Mako are going to end up trying to punish him around his red buff. Monki gets Cataclysm, does not have the Dragon's Rage, and will end up falling to the Jarvan. About and Arha can do nothing about it, as Jwei now controls this bottom side jungler for Invictus.
Yeah, and this can tend to happen where if you are going for a lot of those early game ganks, you get a lot of gold, but you do miss out on XP, and Jwei there dinging the level 6, really making use of that fact. Cataclysm onto Monki. No way out, no ward hop, no flash, no nothing. Karis wants to say something.
He does a lot of damage on the Rise, and Jwei doesn't have a smite to take this red buff away, so he's actually going to fully secure that objective for Team WE. True Shot Barrage would have taken him down, but it does not connect, and now the Realm Warp's going to come in for the Rise to try to force more out of Mako. He flashes away. About's here to join the party around the Tri-Brush, and Mako could all of a sudden be in some trouble. Cosmic Binding finds 2. About just a couple more autos with Lethal Tempo will be able to take him down, and Team WE gonna look for even more down here on the bottom lane. Jachi's forced to flash. He's taken and burning, will not drop. But WE end up capitalizing off of an over-aggressive play from Jwei.
Yeah, just like that apparently from Karis, fully fixing all the problems that Monki's aggression caused them. Cube here in no man's land. Kasha knows what he's up to, I guess getting some deep vision of some kind. Looks like Nia might be onto him, might not be. We'll see if this channel goes through. Looks like it will, but yeah, unfortunately, yeah, that's quite crazy ridiculous what was able to unfold there. Karis not only getting those kills, but also the red buff for himself. Definitely granting him a lot of gold off the back of that play. Still only sitting at a 300 gold lead, but about picking up a kill for himself, giving him a 300 gold lead as well. WE finding some punches, finding some licks here, Grapes.
Producer Ilya flashing that L3 right after Mako died, but a good Cosmic Binding to try to keep his AD carry alive at the very least. And that's a reminder for all of you guys here that are watching LPL English that we will be opening all pro voting once again for the fans. So you can scan that QR code if we can pop that right back up to join our Discord. The voting will be opening in a week or so once the regular season really begins to wrap up. I would say if you pick anybody for this series for that, it probably should be Mako, as we were trying to hype him up. And we'll see if he's able to continue that play the rest of the day.
Yeah, I mean, Mako was low-key clutch in there. He did land the double Cosmic Binding, and he was putting in some work in the previous plays that did bring down Monki, but unfortunately, he was not able to survive off the back of that. Jwei even having to burn his flash as well. And, you know, for Monki having not played this Lee Sin for a couple years, it's definitely looking like his early game is in a pretty good spot where WE might be able to net themselves, you know, more than just one win. You know, if they're able to do what they did with the previous Rise as a real comp, why not do it again?
Now they're going to look for even more aggression down towards the bottom lane. Remember, no flash available for Jwei. Eats a boatload of poke. The wave was cleared out nicely by the bullet time, so a dive will be a little bit more difficult. Reset has been channeled. Monki comfortable enough to just steal away this Gromp, get some more experience into his hands, and about an Arha to shove this wave in, hopefully get a nice back for themselves.
Yeah, pretty clutch bullet time there from Jwei to make sure he gets his recall off and, you know, not much worse takes place. It's pretty interesting what we're seeing here, though, that this Rise is really having so much agency in this Cassiopeia matchup. It's almost never the case when it comes to these two champions. It's only ever like this if you're able to get those early game kills, those early game ganks off. Nya dying to that second gank especially was really, really costly because, of course, that first one was just a 1-for-1. They had to expend so many resources, even with Nico coming up there, burning her own sums. But that second death has, I would say, really put themselves at a pretty big snowball situation where Cassio needs to make her way back into this game.
Trading up here on the top side, Cube and Breathe going at it. There is the look at that updated ultimate on the public execution from Cube. A little bit longer, but again, that really can make the difference, especially if a big carry like Jwei is trying to avoid it. Can burn that flash just a little bit quicker. And so Cube on this Mbessa can be a little bit more creative in terms of finding those angles. Speaking of creative angles, we have Arha transformed into a caster minion here, looking to try to bait Invictus into some sort of play with Monki in the wings, but Jwei is also here to try and defend.
Yeah, Jwei is a fresh level 8. It's pretty much not a single XP more, whereas Monki looking to hit that level 8 himself.
Yeah, Karis has his flash, but the miasma again going to prevent that from actually going down. He has to run the other way in order to even burn that summoner, and by that point, it was far too late. Jwei making his presence known in the mid lane and punishing Karis.
Yeah, a complete wonder from Karis there.
Ooh,
meanwhile,
flash forward from Arha. They're going to land the Pop Blossom. Arha's certainly going to die, but will it be enough here for About with the flash Mystic Shot to get away from turret range? It will end up being a winning trade for WE down there. They do end up losing another kill for Jwei.
that was pretty scary. That was way too close from WE's bot lane, but a completely super clutch fadeaway from About on the Ezreal, getting that Mystic Shot and just barely flashing out of tower range. That would have been very, very awkward had that Mystic Shot not landed. So really clutch clicks there from About, able to make that happen. We'll see what they really wanted here. They just really wanted this aggression. They knew Bard was elsewhere. Arha decided to just fully flash on in and get the Pop Blossom. And once those towers get ramped up, you are not too long for this world, as seen there. But I can't help but harp on that misplay from Karis. I cannot believe he didn't flash that Cataclysm before the miasma came in. That's the whole interaction.
Was trying to be a little bit too greedy with saving that summoner
Sure
spell.
was.
Ends up losing it anyway and dying. So it's the worst of both situations. And that means he can get targeted once again by a Tempered Fate coming out from Mako. The miasma gonna make this nearly unplayable as Karis now dies for the second time in just as many minutes.
So maybe all those mid laners out there might be able to relate, but personally, I've been banning Bard since I can remember this season, because especially if you're picking a champion like this, and most of the meta champions, keep in mind, do not have counterplated Cataclysm, do not have counterplated Tempered Fate, as we see here onto Arha.
Yeah. Arha used his flash to go for the play down bottom, and I think Jwei is very aware of that one. And Mako will get on the board himself as well. WB got off to a good early game, but IG are clawing back over these last few minutes.
Yeah, and you can see here why the J4 first pick is allowed, because just so many of the prominent meta picks have all this immobility. Monki!
Oh, he gets hit by the Petrifying Gaze.
Needs
to get the Q back in to make it a 1-for-1. Nicely done to at least secure the trade. And that's going to allow for Karis to get shoved mid, but it will come at the cost of Jwei taking down this second dragon.
Yeah, we have a fast-paced LPL game going on here. It's definitely going to come down to one of the more meaningful plays, because a lot of these plays are just kind of going tit for tat, where one team gets another kill, then another team trades it back. We haven't seen anything fully break open this game yet, but I feel like something is bound to do so with all this volatility and chaos taking place here. Monki lucky to escape that play with a 1-for-1, if you ask me.
And if you're a team like WE looking for their first series win, probably, as the underdog, makes sense to go for this sort of volatility, high tempo playstyle where you're just trading kills back and forth, hoping things start to slide your way. When WE had their success about a year ago in Split 2, kind of out of nowhere, it wasn't necessarily due to their early games, but it was because of their decisiveness, most notably Monki, just going for these crazy plays and having them work out 9 times out of 10. Gonna need some of that mentality to re-emerge as he goes for another play down on the mid lane. It's Nya, and he gets targeted once again. The miasma prevents any other dashes, but there's still a lot of DPS being issued. Cube gets on the board, and WE once again find a kill.
Yeah, that's the exact member you want to be targeting and killing there. So, this is a really meaningful swing here to be getting this kill onto Nya. That bot lane tower is going to be fully exposed. You're going to have to send Breathe down there to defend that, but that's just going to mean that Karis is going to have this leeway up here in the top side. Of course, he's on a bit of a weak side timer here because Mako is in the wings. Let's see if Karis can even escape this one. Who's attacking who?
Like Karis is going for a play himself. He gets hit up by the flag and drag. Teleport coming in as well from both solo laners. And that means that the Rise is instantly toast. Blast Cone away from About, who's going to try to escape the wrath of Nya, who has come back in and looking for revenge. Nice use of the clone from Arha to make sure that Unstoppable Onslaught doesn't find anything more. But IG get a pick on the WE mid laner and will immediately try to punish with the Herald as it spawns.
So it's hard to say who's going to get the overall net win from this play because it's a bit of a cross-map situation here. They're investing both of the teleports from IG's side, whereas Cube, not even having access to his, going to get that fully unanswered bot lane tower down there, granting him a huge gold lead on the Ambessa of 1.6k here, really meaning that he might be able to have a lot of influence and impact in this game. We'll see if he's even able to pick up his second item already off of the back of all that gold, but if not, he should be very well along his way towards that black cleaver, which is going to be there it is, a huge power spike for that Ambessa, really enabling him to actually puncture some damage to this beefy champ that is Sion. And speaking of items, I do want to touch on one more thing on our screen here, and that's that item here in Nya's inventory. Well, remember Cassiopeia couldn't build boots before. Well, now not only can she build boots, she can build these ones, Grapes. The Immortal Path being shown here.
A lot of extra damage. Might be useful here against Arha, who immediately has to flash away basically as soon as it came right off cooldown. Mako still lands the Cosmic Binding and keep things a little bit hairier for WE's side, but they will be able to live with the Nico alive. Dragon up in 2 minutes. WE likely want to contest that as they certainly have that advantage with Cube on the bottom side of the map.
Yeah, so if the Chaos even gives us a breather, I really think that this is a really opportune item choice for the Cassio. Frankly, I somehow haven't seen it just because I suppose North America doesn't have much Cassio gameplay to be found, but this makes just perfect sense because making use of Omnivamp is particularly good on champions that deal boatloads of damage, Cassio being one of them, and then the passives it offers you in increased healing and shielding is extremely effective when you have innate healing and shielding from the E giving you healing and the Seraphs giving you shielding. So this Cassio is going to be really beefy with all of that. Stats here, Karis only has his flash, don't think he's long for this world.
Oh, actually a little bit of dis-synergy there with the Miasma and the Tempered Fate locking him up, but not going to matter as Karis has had a rough last 10 minutes or so. He dies for the 5th time this game as IG have been bullying him the entirety of game number 1.
It's really crazy to see what's been going on here in the mid lane, particularly for Karis, just given that how the game started with first that first blood trade, onto they were able to slay Nya. And then they also got the additional kills onto Nya from Monki. Yet somehow all this time, Karis is just tanking death after death. And I can't help but feel like it was all because of that one instance of not flashing the Cataclysm. We can only give him all the leeway and benefit of the doubt that he deserves. But unfortunately, he's going to find himself in the rest of the time of a game state where he's up against a Jarvan, a Bard, and a Cassiope as Rise. And frankly speaking, staying alive is going to be really tough. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up finding a scoreline similar to the WE win rate here in Group Ascent.
Yeah, the solo laners for WE have had it rough. Cube and Karis, the 2 worst KDAs of any Group Ascend player entering today. Certainly has not looked much better for Karis. Cube, actually in a good position to carry. We'll see if he's able to take advantage of that with the Dragon now available on the bottom side of the map. It looks like Nya is just heading down there to try and dish out some DPS on it immediately before the rest of his team arrives. And WE going to be delayed to try to answer this with still Q being on the top side.
Yeah, are we ever able to smite this here? Doesn't appear like it. Maybe we want to fight here as WE, but it's going to be hard to find an access point.
Karis gets flashed on, this time able to get away from the Cataclysm before the Miasma ends up connecting, but we already see teleports being channeled by both of these top laners who want to try to 5v5. Monki going to land that Sonic Wave, but only on to Breathe. He uses the Resonating Strike forward, but it's not going to find too much. Tempered Fate from Mako, though, able to land onto 2. Combined with a Bullet Time and the Cosmic Binding, the Wombo combo immediately takes Monki down, but Cube in the backline finds neither kill onto Mako, but doesn't end up taking the bar down. Meanwhile, the Rift Herald being used to knock up Karis and set up for Nya to take one. And a bout will go down as well. Jwei with the Herald of a lifetime, able to take 2 kills and a team fight win for IG.
And this is the straw that breaks the camel's back from my perspective. A team fight win like this is just so hugely meaningful. Just watch that gold lead build and build here. It doesn't look too substantial just yet, but once everybody on the side of IG is able to really reap the benefits of this play, you know, spending all that gold and really making use of all of the summoner spells that were created throughout all of this, just some over-aggression here, some poor teamfight execution from the side of WE. Mako, that MVP candidate, you know, well, not MVP, right, but, you know, the main team, you know, maybe the best supporting group percent, you know, we're trying to give him some hype here with that, you know, that stat line that he's got, and yeah, really clutching that fight on the board there.
I'm surprised WE opted into a 5v5 against this Invictus composition. I mean, they sent Cube to match Breeze teleport. They did not have to fight there. They could have backed away, taken, you know, their resets, gotten back out onto the map, and tried to continue to farm and find picks like they have been doing so successfully. But opting into that 5v5 team fight ends up proving unwell for Team WE, who are now down 2.4 thousand gold on top of that Dragon. You see where all that gold is. It is on to the rookie mid laner of Invictus in Nya. Has that second item already completed in the Seraphs, looking for more. Monki looking to punish onto Mako and does find the Bard. And those are the plays that WE needs to make. Not in a 5v5 situation, in these isolated 1v2s, 3v2s. And it looks like that is going to be what happens here as they force an ultimate out of Breathe.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it was really strange. Well, understandable, of course. I mean, this is the LPL after all, and fighting is just the most typical thing that we're ever seeing when it comes to, you know, Chinese solo queue or LPL gameplay, because we just love combat in this region, and it's completely awesome. I get it, but as Karis, as a comp like this as Rise, you really want to be spreading yourselves out across the map, and finding yourselves in a complete 5v5 full-on phalanx situation is almost never going to be too favorable with this comp up against the other, unless you get a really beautiful engage from Arha before Mako works all his magic, and that's just unfortunately too picture perfect of a world that we're not going to find ourselves in. So hopefully they can really make use of this Rise to really change the numbers around the map and maybe find themselves in situations where they have the upper hand in terms of those numbers with that global ability. But because of all this dying and because of all this grouping and because of all these mistakes, Karis has been sitting on a huge XP deficit, and this game is getting real hard real fast.
About with a aggressive arcane shift backwards to try to get away from the Tempered Fate. You really had to get away from the entirety of that diameter of the circle that Mako drew on the ground in the mid lane. As now Invictus, with that gold lead, going to feel very comfortable about where things are headed. WE, as you mentioned, need to continue to push the pace, find these plays, specifically with Monki on this Lee Sin. A little bit hard to come by.
Here we go.
As he finds the outway, immediately forces the flash, then insects him back into the waiting arms of Arha. Nicely done by the support jungle duo of Team WE. They take down Jwei for the first time this game.
Yeah, I've always, for some reason, just in my head, categorized Lee Sin as a Monki champ, so it's just a total surprise hearing that he hadn't played it much recently at all. But from that, it looked really beautiful. It looks like Breathe just launching himself in to try and defend his mid lane tower. I'm not sure if WE is going to be able to crack this one because of it.
So taking down half of his health, resetting, and WE get a little bit of a breath of life. Jwei will be alive for the spawning of this next dragon, but this gives WE opportunities for perhaps a free reset. Cube gets to clear out this top side. then make their way towards what could be a soul point for Invictus Gaming. Breathe looking to push the tempo on that, though. He immediately sends in a TP to be able to join his team as 5 because IG know that is where they are the strongest in these full-on team fight situations.
Yeah. Juggernauts like Sion really making use of that top lane quest value, getting that 30% max HP shield. It lasts for 30 seconds, so you want to bide your time, but Monki does not, fully launching himself in there. We're going to fight.
That's already the Cataclysm. Burn from Jwei. Perhaps an opportunity here for WE with Cube off of the teleport flank, looking for a public execution onto somebody. The Dragons at 2,500. Both junglers have their smite, looking to try to be at a 50-50, and it's Monki that secures it and denies the soul point for now. Mako now with the flash away. Cube did not land the public execution, but he's immediately found Jachi in the backline and takes him down with a Q2. Karis able to land that final blow. And WE get the dragon, and they get both the bottom lane members of Invictus Gaming with pings towards the Baron now on the horizon.
Oh, I'm a bit afraid of what happens when pings come onto the Baron from Team WE, because I've played these games before, as a famous protagonist once said, but you know, we're gonna send it as WE here up against this Baron. Monki been making some clutch plays lately. Can he make this one?
Now with 3 full items, Breathe gonna immediately send himself in with that unstoppable onslaught. They find Karis, but they have a pop blossom onto Nya. Monki's able to get one more kill, and it's just Breathe left alone with a 2,000 HP Baron, and they'll be able to take it down. Smite away from Monki, and Team WE have themselves the Baron Nashor.
The Team WE and the Xi'an home ground are fully locked in. Monki here on his Lee Sin, making play after play. Karis dying 7 times and still finding himself in a favorable game state. You cannot make this up. This is the cinema that we signed up to the LPL for. And you know what? We've even got a fiendish codex into the inventory of About Grapes. We're going the full distance in the cinemacy of this one. I'm going to make up a new word, but Monki landing a beautiful smite here and making the rest of this play just so advantageous for WE. This could not have gone much better if you drew it up yourself.
And Cube doesn't get the ultimate, but is able to burn Joshi's flash and immediately follows up. Just absolutely one-shot the MF without even having that bullet time beat channeled. And then look at how Arha's able to play this fight as well. 2-man Pop Blossom stops Jwei a little bit, and Monki somehow lives through all of this.
Yeah, Monki just somehow, some way, his hit points are staying above that 0 threshold. He's able to just keep increasing those HP numbers with that, you know, Lee Sin and the Sunder Sky. He's got a GA.
No.
It's gonna be burned here, though.
We might have caster cursed him as he goes a little bit too far forward. As the GA popped in, that's going to be his life as well. Shutdown goes the way of Jachi, and that's going to significantly stymie what WE are going to be able to do with this Baron power play. Mid lane certainly will be ceded over to Invictus, but WE with Cube up on the top side, at least able to claim a tier 2 turret for themselves.
Yeah, that is going to fully put some brakes onto the gas that was being shown here from WE and from Monki. You know, even worse of a story because he's losing that full GA cooldown here. Not just a death, but a death with the Baron power play. That's going to mean they probably only got 1 wave, if even, to make use of this Baron buff that now only sits on 3 of their members. Maybe even 2 if Arha went, nope, just 3, right? Arha did not go down in the previous play, but if anything, it's just going to mean WE has a lot of time to farm, maybe not as much time to be proactive, and we're going to see what ends up happening on this 5th Drake. These are my favorite game states to watch as a caster or as a viewer, where both teams have 2 Drakes apiece. And this next fight won't necessarily end the game, though Karis will not have his flash for it.
Yeah, immediately has to use that. He's been useful in some situations, but is certainly decelerated in terms of where the game state is. You can see here only the Seeker's Arm Guard compared to a full Rylai's and the Faded Ashes in the hands of Nya. So in terms of the DPS he's able to output, definitely not as much. Going to have to use a little bit more of that utility to find value in these 5v5s. 5v5 actually ended up working out pretty well for WE because of the disjointed nature of it, right? Cube is on the other side of things with the teleport. That's going to have to be the formula that they go for once again when this dragon does eventually spawn.
Yeah, I think if Cube is able to get a look nearly similar to that previous one onto Jiachi there, where he's able to just fully be on top of them, the Ambessa champion is capable of deleting HP bars, especially off of immobile champions like Misfortune. Now, whilst that public execution cast time is increased, it is very effective against channel spells such as Sion's Q or Misfortune's ultimate. We'll see, he's gonna have to probably use it here.
He's unkillable though right now with all of that sustain and the Death Dance in his inventory. Cube gets out with 40% HP and all the resources being burned. There's the bullet time, but it only forces a W out of the Mbessa, and all in the meanwhile, WE is able to push down mid, push into the top side. They don't really care about giving up this dragon specifically, or at least the positioning around it, because they're going to just collect gold for themselves.
This is exactly what we wanted to be seeing from WE, which is positioning their characters in multiple places around the map. You see Karis and About not falling for the IG bait of come fight us, come let's have some combat down here with all of our champions. No, that's exactly what you don't want to do. You want to keep your champions spread out across the map, making use of all this potential. Even Ezreal has a lot of safety being alone or, you know, on his own, because with the arcane shift, with all the cooldown reduction that he has, he's just fully able to build himself some distance, able to get some damage onto those towers, and a lot of gold picked up on that previous play for Karis and About, only really costing them nothing. Cube didn't even flash, and his public execution is back off cooldown.
It does cost them vision control around the bottom side river. WE have to give up that control for Invictus to make their way into the pit. It will be soul point for whoever picks this one up, and you can see a deep teleport in from Cube on the Mbessa. IG should be able to spot that this is happening, but now have to prepare for that eventual public execution. Tempered Fate goes wide. Jwei lands a Cataclysm on a 2, but in goes Arha! A 4-man Pop Blossom, and Cube is there to capitalize. Jachi goes down. Mako the next to follow, and it's a double kill already for the top laner of Team WE. They get a third onto the Scion, and Jwei is running the wrong way. And it should be Team WE winning this fight, getting another dragon for themselves, and taking firm control of game number 1.
I tell you what, there's a very real timeline in which they can end the game here. It looks like they've got a pretty big wave. They've got plenty of minions at least to do so in the bot lane. They've got pretty long death timers at that for the side of IG. Looks like Jwei is able to get his base off, and I think that's going to be a pretty impactful detail here. You surely cannot push past this inhibitor as Team WE. It would remind me of a crazy look that NIP once had against BLG, where you just decide to keep going forward, whether it's the most wise idea or not. They decide not to go for that play, and definitely to play it on the safer side of things, even securing the dragon off of the back of that play. A practical ace there from WE, and the beautiful engage that Arha's Pop Blossom was.
What an engage for this new support of Team WE. Got booted for Weibo as they were a team that wanted some more experience, but it is the sophomore support having a massive impact in this team fight.
Yeah, it comes in as the minion. Jachi trying to build just enough space to get away from him. Unfortunately, that is not the case. He gets clipped by the Pop Blossom there, and thus giving that nerf public execution of Cube plenty of time and crowd control to land there onto Jachi, where he is not long for this world. That's 2 back-to-back fights where Jachi is fully one-shot, mostly by Cube, and the distance he's able to close onto him. Cube looking really hot this game. He must have heard that we were talking some trash, perhaps, and let's see if he can keep it up.
Teleport in from Breathe. As again, that was the second team fight that Jachi did not use his bullet time, the most important spell, perhaps in the entire game. In terms of the damage that IG's able to do, and they immediately, speaking of damage, one shot! The Jarvan, the 4th Arha, comes in with another 3-man Pop Blossom, and Cubes into the backline. They're gonna do it! Team WE get a 4-for-0, soon to be 5, as Breeze's not long for this world. They're gonna push down mid and take their second game of the 2026 spring season.
Just like that, the WE Hopium is as strong as ever. The beautiful looks here from Arha, from Monki all game, from Cube as well, about even pushing some numbers, and Karis keeping that death total at a mere 7 after all of the crazy shenanigans taking place. You gotta hand it to them. They fought hard and they were resilient throughout the entirety of this game. They had a lot of things not go their way, but they had just enough of them go the way they wanted, and WE gonna come out on top. And I thought this might happen, man. I wanted to be the fella, the bloke himself, to cast WE's first series win, and we've been here before, but let's see if they can do it differently this time around.
Some great play from Cube and Monki, the top side of the map for Team WE, really stepping up this time around. They got the matchups that they were looking for. The Lee Sin into the Jarvan, the Mbessa into the Scion, and they damn well took advantage. Cube, who has been such a struggling player for the entirety of split number 2. The lowest KDA, the lowest kill participation of any LPL player this split, comes in and has a massive performance. I would not be surprised to see him earn player of the game, but it was also Monki's tempo in the early game driving the direction that WE wanted to go, and Arha with some massive pop blossoms at the end that result in WE for the second straight series being at match point over a competitor in Group Ascent.
Yeah, that's, again, we've played these games before, but this time we have some experience, because keep in mind, the whole entirety of Split 2, they didn't find themselves a single game win, right? So now they at least know what it's like to have a game win because they've done that before. So maybe that experience has meant that they're now able to translate that game win into a series win. We're going to have to see about that.
Yeah, there's still a lot more League of Legends to be played today, so don't want to get your hopes up too much because WE also immediately dropped the next 2 games of that series against JDG in pretty convincing fashion. So maybe IG will be able to bounce back, but this is also an Invictus Gaming team that has been struggling. Their only win has been against Weibo, the team that is right next to them in the standings, and with WE feeling a little bit of that momentum and with this crowd in CN behind them, perhaps this is the opportunity for them to pick up win number 1 of Split 2. You might remember about a year ago, Team WE started off Split number 2 of 2025 0-6 in series score. Not as bad as 0-9, but guess what they were able to do in that season? Come all the way back and end top 4 in the playoffs. It doesn't really matter how you do in the regular season. As long as you can get your way through the door, win that one best of 5 to enter you into the postseason bracket, all bets are off, and that's what WE will be hoping for here in this season again.
Yeah, and honestly, come to think of it, that was probably their first like pure game win, if you ask me. I really think that win that they got against JDG, where Gala just fully casted a Caitlyn E towards their tower, that doesn't really feel like that natural of a win. It feels like just such a crazy blunder that you don't really necessarily get to call that the WE being good as much as JDG making a huge blunder. But this game, from start to finish, of course, it was messy. You wouldn't expect it to be otherwise, but it was good enough. The gameplay was sufficient. I think if you threw the caliber of play here up against, some of the other Group Ascent teams, you might have been able to win against them too. I know, of course, IG had some shortcomings, and Jwei not able to cast any bullet times, Nya dying to so many of those ganks from Monki, but maybe that's just because they were finding good looks from the side of WE, and they really knew what they were doing on these champions that they previously won a game on.
Yeah, Ryze and Ezreal in the late game ends up being pretty good. And again, the emphasis of having Arha on a champion that is able to engage, push that go button, that seems to be a big win condition for Team WE. He was on Nautilus in the 1 game win that they had against JD Gaming. Let's take a look at some of our highlights here and start to wonder, what could IG have done better? Obviously, Jwei had a pretty good time getting around the map. They targeted Karis. They were able to get Nya ahead, but it didn't really end up seeming to matter. Was it composition diff, or was it just the players not able to perform?
I think the composition can be pretty tricky there. As the side of Jwei, you're playing this Flash Barrier MF, and even though the public execution is nerfed, it's just so hard to stay alive in these fights. You want to be using that Bard and his utility to really be proactive and really make use of the fact there's a lot of immobility on the side of WE. It's really hard to mark Jwei and keep him safe in these fights. I mean, this was the one good luck that they did end up having. A beautiful Tempered Fate set up into the bullet time here. Really good stuff out of Mako, followed nice off Jwei, even using the Rift Herald. Here was where I thought that this was just going to be the same old story again. WE has a decent looking game state, they're in it for a long enough time, and then boom, just like that, one awful situation, and game's over. But no, the fact that they're able to have this fight happen and still win because, regardless of that fact, that says a lot about this team's growth, resilience, and tenacity. Really good looks. And Monki himself making really huge picks like that throughout the entirety of the game. But this right here, the total MVP moment. I mean, it was in the exact same spot in a separate clip, but Arha, who I'm referring to, fully get this to MVP, if you ask me, from a lot of the engages that he was playing. If not him, then Monki. Could be Cube as well. I mean, honestly, those 3 played really well.
It really does feel like the WE that we saw hit top 4 last year, where the early games are messy, maybe not necessarily always going their way, but they're able to find these very slim but very high value angles in the team fights. Whether it's Arha going for an engage, Cube looking for a flank, or Monki just sending it onto anybody like he did with Jwei right here. This is what found WE a lot of success when they did have success last year, which is the first time they had success in a number of years in the LPL. And that's what they have to keep doing. They want to get their first win of the 2026 split number 2.
Yeah, this definitely showed signs of life from WE in their home stage here, in the home crowd. And I'm really curious to see who gets the MVP performance. I think just as long as it's not Karis. I mean, I don't even think he played that badly, but I think you gotta be flashing those cataclysms, man. I mean, his team really delivered in that game. So all 4 of them, they could get an MVP in my eyes.
I know as a mid laner that just like is gonna personally just bother you the rest of the day. So we'll try to make sure that Karis is aware of that next time. Hopefully a learning experience for him, just like it must have been for you at one point.
Oh yeah.
But he should have had many of those learning experiences before, right? He was in Korea, he was on Gen G, he then comes over here. He's been a player around for a long time. Let's take a look at who our player of the game is. It was Arha on the Nico. Can't say I'm too upset about that, thanks to the massive ultimates that he had to win his team some of those decisive team fights.
Yeah, this was the first name that came to mind for me. You know, I just can't help but think of that highlight clip level moment that he is landing on the Nico this game. And honestly, throughout the entirety of the game, even that first blood where he is able to get that flash E onto Nia, he just have an influence and impact throughout the entirety of this game, really making use of Nico from start to finish. First MVP candidate in my eyes, glad he gets to have it, and really good showing from WE in the first game of the set.
So Team WE up 1-0 once again. Although last time we saw this did not end up being that Cinderella story. Maybe the plot turns here against IG as we get ready to send ourselves to game number 2. Before we do that, I want to give a quick shout out to everybody here watching on LPL English, especially to our coffee supporters. If you'd like to support us on LPL English, consider becoming a coffee member, as it's the best way to support our stream directly, with the vast majority of contributions going directly to the show. A lot of the initial payments have gone into upgrading the broadcast, like this amazing graphics package that we've been able to run for 2026, but also a bulk of it pays us on-air talent, content creators, and production staff. So you can subscribe to our coffee, currently linked in the chat by one of our mods, to unlock perks like early access to content and the ability to ask interview questions for our unique on-site interviews. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll see if Team WE can pull off the upset, get their first win of the split, or if IG will send ourselves to that decider in our first series of week number 6.